Hey, it's Maria here. If you don't know me, I'm the personality decoder. It's lovely to meet you. Um, Today, we're talking about healing and how um, recovery can take some time, but it also brings about a massive amount of self-dignity and care if we allow ourselves to do it. So, I have a question for you that when I asked this of myself and answered, I honestly, I found it a little bit, um, I found myself a little bit taken aback by my answer. So let's see what you think. Are you, if you take stock seriously and honestly, are you unknowingly poisoning your mind and body with stress and anxiety and grief? Now, of course, things happen in our lives that we're grief-stricken of. Of course, things happen in our lives that stress us out, that are out of our control. And of course, things happen on a global scale. We've seen it recently with wars, a pandemic, social and political unrest, things that can cause anxiety. So I'm not saying that those things don't happen. They absolutely do. But my question to you is, are you unknowingly, or is it possible that you are unknowingly poisoning yourself and your mind and body with stress, anxiety, and grief? So most of us who are helpers and supporters of others, we tend to put our own needs at the bottom of the list. So we prioritize our friends, our significant others, our parents, our children, and if we have time, then we'll take care of ourselves. Now, the challenge with this approach, of course, is that we don't get enough recovery time in between stressors, so those things that happen to us that cause us stress or grief or anxiety, to ground ourselves and to integrate our emotional states. So we don't get that opportunity to recover. Things happen so fast these days. So instead of taking time to honor our grief of a loved one that we've lost, or spending time finding our center again after that kind of a local or global struggle or tragedy, we can pretend to kind of keep calm and carry on. But of course, that's not a great long-term solution. So whilst staying calm and continuing to do what you're doing is a good short-term tactic, especially if times are hard, as a long-term strategy, it's not necessarily going to work for you. And of course, our resilience grows with the more adversity that we see. But if we don't take the time to stop, just stop every now and again, come to terms with the changes in our circumstances, care for ourselves, and then build a new reality step by step, brick by brick, it's very hard to just keep going. And at some stage, then we hit that wall. If you've suffered in the last couple of years from anxiety, you know exactly what I'm talking about. You hit that wall, and then you wonder how you got to that point. So it can feel like it's almost coming from out of nowhere. This is something that happened to a client of mine. Let's call her Mila. So in this last year, Mila's gone through a divorce. She's divorced her husband of 30 years. She was financially taken advantage of or abused by a subsequent partner. And she's also dealing with chronic pain. Mila has MS. Now, Mila's always been there for other people. She's always the person who's checking in with everyone, who's making sure that others get what they need. And in the last year, when I asked her, you're always helping people, how many times have you reached out? She said 4 times. She's only asked for support 4 times in the last year. And then when I asked about her support system, she said she doesn't want to bother others with her problems, and she knows that she will be fine. It's just a matter of time. And a lot of people would find that honorable and even a sign of incredible strength. And I used to be one of those people. And I was wondering, not to project onto Mila that what happened for me might be what's happening for her. So I wanted to check in with her and ask some more questions. So I asked some questions about her baseline of self-care protocol. What is she actually doing with all the stressors that are going on in her life, not to mention the global pandemic, not to mention the past political and current civil unrest in North America where she lives. And she kind of just shrugged her shoulders and she said, well, what can I do? There's nothing to do. There's nothing I can do to fix this. I can't, fix these situations. They're out of my control. So next I asked her about how she's feeling about herself. And she said that she no longer recognizes herself. She said she used to be so bubbly and full of energy, and now she feels like she's a drag. And she's kind of even to a point of wondering why anyone would want to spend any time with her. So you can see how that's starting to accumulate, that sense of loneliness and so on. She then told me that she started self-isolating because she's feeling like she's not bringing anything of value to the table, and she was feeling lonely. And so I asked her to list all the adversities that she's experienced in the last, say, 5 years. So write down all the challenges and adversities that you've experienced in the last 5 years and get back to me. And when I received her list of challenges, I was amazed, absolutely blown away by the amount of adversities that she had overcome and how much she had to do to just stay afloat in everyday life. I was completely blown away by this. And it's not unusual that helpers do this. It's actually quite normal that people who have that helping gene, that we just keep going. Regardless of what's going on, there's always hope and we're always just going to keep going and so on. But then as the adversities accumulated for Mila, she said that she started to go further and further down into anxiety and even symptoms of depression, not showering every day or even every couple of days, like even though she was still living a very active lifestyle, eating processed foods and kind of the easy, quick sugars. She had started drinking wine every day to be able to wind down. And this is kind of the stage where I started getting worried about her because she was seemingly living a productive life, right? She looked like she was fine. And she wasn't asking for help. She wasn't putting up any red flags. But really, the toxic surroundings and people had started to pull her down and drown her in that toxicity, that pool of toxicity. And the more she paddled to try and get out of that river of waste, so to speak, the more tired she got. So she was trying to paddle out, trying to do more to get out of it. But then she got more tired for doing more. And then she attracted even more toxicity and toxic people into her life. So that was, the point where I said, okay, there's something really significant going on here. And this is your gateway to serious depression and mental health issues if you don't already have those. And this was the first time when she paused, and instead of defending her position, she asked me, what can I do? So for me, that was that point of change, the cue to tell me that she had felt heard and acknowledged for where she was. And now she was actually ready for some outside input to her situation. Because if you're talking to a person who is highly distressed, stressed, overwhelmed, anxious, giving them more things to do is not going to help them. So we need to listen, ask questions. So all those years had made her more and more insular. She was more and more inward facing. She'd locked out support of the outside world. And for the first time in the year that I'd known her, she asked a direct question about what she can do about her circumstance to change it. In the past, for the last year that I had been interacting with her and she'd been part of our community, she'd just been kind of lurking in the shadows, doing bits and pieces, but this was the first time she asked a direct question. So I knew that this was the moment that I had to take really, really gently with her. And instead of overwhelming her with, okay, so now do this, do that, do the other, you should do this, you should do that. I told her, do nothing. And she was like, what do you mean? And I said, do nothing as in actively take time to rest. You know, she told me she's too busy to rest and that, you know, she wants to know if there's something that she can do about the situation. And I repeated myself to her and I said, you know, I understand this cycle that you're in very, very well, right? That you're in right now. I know it intimately. You know, I was there for about a decade before I realized that what I needed was to rest, ground myself, and then from that space, with a fresh mind, get on to the task. So I asked her, you know, do you know that by allowing yourself to rest, your brain has a chance to clean itself from any waste material that's sitting there? And she was looking at me like, I don't understand what you're saying. So I said to her, well, do you feel like, you know, do you feel like your day just keeps getting faster and faster? The tasks that you should do keep coming at you faster and faster. Like, do you ever feel like your thoughts just go around and around and around in your head? And she said, yes, I can absolutely understand that. So I said to her, it could be because your brain is toxic and it needs to be cleaned. So if you look at rest, or you look at another cup of coffee, which is something that Mila had recognized as something that she does when she gets this hyper. I said to her, instead of, you know, another cup of coffee will not clean your brain. So instead of doing that, perhaps consider resting, sleeping, because another cup of coffee will only make that monkey mind even faster and faster and faster. So you're self-perpetuating the issue that's there. So your biggest leverage actually in being productive is rediscovering yourself through rest, recovering from stress, anxiety. Slow down when you're feeling those things, grief, anxiety, stress. Slow down. If you want to be productive, don't speed up, slow down. So now it was starting to kind of land on her a little bit. She was saying, oh, I've never thought of it that way because I thought that I should just be more productive, as in doing things. And I told her the story about the old woodsman and the young woodsman. And the young woodsman thought he was all that jazz. And he invited or challenged the old woodsman to a woodcutting competition. And they both had an axe. And they gave each other 24 hours to cut as much wood as they possibly could. And whoever cut the most wood would win the competition. And the young man just went in for it, kept going the whole 24 hours, took a little bit of time to eat, whatever, but just kept going. And the old woodsman, he was taking some breaks. The young woodsman could hear the old woodsman not keep, going, like didn't keep going the whole time. And the young woodsman was thinking, I'm winning this competition. And at the end, the old woodsman had been felling more trees than the young woodsman. Why? Because he had taken time to sharpen his axe. Not because he kept putting more effort into it, but because he knew that he wanted to make most of the tools that he had. And the same is true for your brain. When we allow ourselves that time to slow down, sharpen that axe, we recover, and then we increase our level of output and simultaneously our self-respect and our dignity. The old woodsman didn't go ahead and just keep punishing himself for trying to prove a point. He became more intentional, and he managed himself and the tools that he had better. And we can do that for stress, anxiety, and grief. We create stamina for adversity, and we make better decisions when we slow down and become deliberate. Is it painful? Yes. You need to learn new habits. Is it emotionally painful? Yes, it is, because we can't try to outrun our emotional triggers anymore. We have to face ourselves and become all of who we are. Mae West said it really well. She said, what's worth doing is worth doing slowly. And you, my friend, and this is what I said to Mila as well, but I want to say to you as well, if you can relate to her story, you, my friend, you're worth building slowly, because you are worthy of love, you're worthy of care, and you're worthy of the kind of support that will allow your genius, your inner genius, to really shine. And when we get to bask in that glory of your inner genius, we're all better off for it. So what happened to Mila for her was that she was able to reclaim her own life over time, her self-dignity. She took 3 specific steps that I recommended for her. Number 1, she learned to listen to her intuition about what she needed rather than going for the usual coping mechanism, the cups of coffee and so on. And instead of reaching that cup of coffee, she started taking naps. She started to improve her nightly sleep hygiene. She started to meditate. So she took that time to slow down and rest. She took me seriously when I said, you need to not do something to fix this. You need to do less. So she took the time to learn, to identify also when her intuition was speaking, and when it was her past trauma kind of whispering in her ear in the undermining way, just take the cup of coffee, you'll be fine. But there is a price to pay at the end of it. So the first thing that Mila learned was to listen to her intuition, not her trauma, but her intuition, and actually do what she needed, not what her ego thought she needed, or her ego was telling her that she needed. The second thing Mila did was she started paying attention to basic sensory self-care protocols. She started with rest. Then she started to improve her diet very gently by introducing something green to every meal that she was eating. Then she upped her water intake. And then after a while, she started to exercise in a way that was right for her body and her mind. And I showed her how to make these changes, each of these small changes, very gradually, and making them into success habits by failing forward. So the second thing that Mila learned was She started to pay attention to basic sensory self-care protocols. What does my body need? The third thing, and the one that really brought it all home for her, that she did, was she started to meet her inner children, and she learned how to make better decisions going forward by understanding her whole inner family and the dynamics that were causing her chronic lack of self-care and prioritizing others over herself. So she met her inner children for the first time consciously. She named them. She did some play dates with them. She found out what was important to them, what their values were, started to proactively meet the needs that arose from those values. And when Mila learned to prioritize her recovery, she rediscovered her dignity and flung herself off that hamster wheel and into self-care. So after working with me for about a year, Mila is now in a supportive relationship. She is financially secure, and she's considering joining our mentoring training program to help others overcome these pains that she experienced. How incredible is that? How is that for paying it forward? So Mila's core message to everyone around her now is, your self-care matters. You matter. You got this. We talked about this. She's absolutely right. You got this. Your self-care matters more than anything else. It matters for your productivity. It matters for how you show up in relationships with others. It matters in what you want to achieve in life. I hope that Mila's story gave you some hope today, especially if you yourself are healing from stress, anxiety, or grief. If you need additional support, join us at our safe haven, sumalov.com, which is our personal and professional development safe house. Now, I'd like you to think about that one person that needs to hear what we've discovered today, what you've discovered today, and tag them into this post or share this video with them, because together, actually, all of our goals and all of our visions and all of our dreams can come together faster. So I'd love to hear what your main takeaway from this video is today. So pop your comments down in the comment section of this video, and let's start those conversations. Let's get you on the right track. I look forward to working with you soon. Look after yourself and stay safe. Take care.